Hi class. Today we're going to discover a new way to analyze, critique, and personally respond to different pieces of literature. We're going to talk about the term social justice, what it means, the social justice lens, what that means, and how all of this applies to literature and how you look at literature. Now before I begin the material of this presentation, I want you to take out your class notebooks and take notes on what I'm about to present. You will need this to refer back to when you're completing tonight's homework assignment. Additionally, before I begin the content, I want you to think about how you define social justice. What do you think of when you think of the term social justice? How has it been implemented into your own life? Have you used it in certain situations? Let's begin. So, when we look at the term social justice, we are basically looking at three main characteristics: resources, opportunities, and privileges. So we're looking at these three main characteristics and how they're distributed in a society. Now, if these are distributed fairly or not, this is how we define social justice. Does everyone have an equal amount of resources and opportunities to gain those resources? Does everybody have the same amount of opportunities and privileges? This is how we define social justice, and now let's see how it applies to literature. So, similar to Marxism, the social justice lens focuses on power and money. Now I know in the previous slide, I talked about these three main characteristics: resources, opportunity, and privilege. But in a society, whoever possesses these three main characteristics typically also possesses the power and the money. And this is what we look at when we look at a piece of literature through this lens. We see who has the power, who has the money, why, who doesn't, and what happens as a result. Additionally, I would like you to think about, is this fair? Do I personally agree with what's going on in this novel? Let's continue. So what can this lens help us see? Aside from answering the questions that I just previously stated, this lens can help us see what is really occurring in a piece of literature. Many pieces of literature in the past have been used to explain information in terms of social justice, what's right, what's wrong, in terms of what the author thinks and the society as a whole. So this encourages the reader to interrogate, question, and possibly challenge certain elements relating to social justice within a piece of writing. Do you believe a certain social group should have a certain amount of resources over another? Do you believe a certain sexuality should have a certain sex should have more opportunity than another? Do you believe a certain race should have more privileges than another does? And why does the author convey these things in a novel? And this is what we look at when we look at the social justice lens. Do you accept what you are reading, and is this fair? Now, these are the two questions I want you to keep in mind, especially when you are completing tonight's homework and when you are reading a novel through the social justice lens. Is it fair, and do I accept it? Now, let's look at a novel we're currently reading in class and apply the social justice lens to that novel. Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, as should come no surprise to all of you, discusses a lot of race relations and issues on race. So let's read this quick excerpt from the novel. The blank lines continued down to the line 20, and I knew that they all had been reserved for black students. A knot of anger swelled in my throat and held there. But as Miss Crocker directed little man to bend over the whipping chair, I put aside my anger and jumped up. Now, you all should recall reading this section from the book, and how the family was unjustly treated, not the family, the whole school was unjustly treated and given improper resources and privileges based on their race. Now, when we look at this is just a picture from the corresponding excerpt in the book. When we are looking at this, we are looking at the book through the social justice lens. I want you to think about, is this situation fair? Do I agree with this situation? Why is this race being punished and not being given the resources, opportunities, and privileges that the white folk in the book are being given? And this is what you need to think about when you're applying the social justice lens to this book in particular, and probably to a lot of books we will continue to read throughout the semester. These are just additional questions you should be asking yourself when looking at that excerpt and additional books you're applying the social justice lens to. Who possesses the power and resources in this situation? So in this case, does the black race have any power or resources? Yeah, we could argue they do have resources, but are they being granted equal resources to the white race? No. They're being given books in poor conditions, and it's not fair. What happens as a result? Do you think their education will suffer? Do you think their home life will suffer? Do you think their social relationships will suffer? These are what you need to ask yourself. And do you believe this is fair? You know, some of you might, some of you may not. And this is a kind of a personal reflection you need to ask yourself when you are applying this lens in this situation. Now let's look at Yummy. This is a book we read last semester, and we're going to now apply the social justice lens to a couple areas in the book. So let me read this first one. In this neighborhood, if you go out at night, you might get yourself shot. Sometimes it feels like a war movie. Now I'm going to read the next one. Even kids just playing in the streets, minding their own business, could get caught up in gang business. Now, where these examples don't discuss resources as much as the others do, I think they really talk about opportunity and privilege. If you recall from Yummy, do the main characters in the novel have the same opportunities as the white race? How do they suffer? By being potentially shot? By getting caught up in gang business? Do you agree with this? Do you believe they should have to suffer because they don't have the opportunity to gain the correct resources due to their race? This is another example of how we can apply the social justice lens to a different kind of book, because if we remember, Yummy is a graphic novel. These are some additional questions, the same one I listed after Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. Who possesses the power in this situation? Do you think some of the kids have a choice to be in the gang? That's a question you have to personally reflect on. What happens as a result? Do they suffer emotionally, physically, socially? And is this a fair outcome? Are all kids destined to this just because they're a certain race? Why do certain races have to be subjected to this and others do not? Who controls this? Society as a whole or specific people in society? These are all questions you can ask yourself when applying the social justice lens to this particular situation. And here's just a scene from the comic, or graphic novel, excuse me. So for homework, I want you to apply all that we've learned, and I encourage you to refer back to the slides and reflect on one of the novels we have discussed, Yummy, or Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, and write a paragraph applying the social justice lens to any excerpt, or it could be a sentence you like from the book. So you could take, let's see, you can just, if you want, you can use this excerpt and write a paragraph and apply the social justice lens to it. Write your personal responses, write about the distribution of resources, opportunity, and privileges. I'm giving you the freedom to write about what you want, but I want to see that you have understood what we have discussed in the presentation and successfully apply the social justice lens to one of these pieces of writing. Have a good day.